being a meeting of council to order. Good morning for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. David, can you lead us in the proclamation?
Sure. Pray with me, please. Lord God, it's been a busy day, and we just take this time now in the falls, Lord, just to reflect on the God that you are, sovereign, holy, full of mercy, full of grace, Lord. Just ask that in all the discussions that we have tonight, Lord, that all the decisions, all the words are said to honor and bring your name in Jesus' name.
Amen. Okay, leave us in public comment. Anyone want to comment? Okay.
Good evening. It's good to be back. I'm speaking in public comments because I wanted to speak to an item on the agenda. And I wanted to record it. And this is the only way I'm going to do it. So I'm taking off the hat that I don't have. Just to be a citizen. First and foremost, I want to thank the council for continuing to function during a very difficult time. And I think you have done a yeoman's job, so thank you. With a very grateful heart. You haven't had to worry about a thing. And what that tells you is that good leaders pick good leaders to continue on, and you are among the best. I truly believe that. I believe that God has put together this council for a very special time, and who knew this would be what it is. That being said, I'd like to thank my husband, who is my continual Superman caregiver. He drives Miss Mayor everywhere because the medications that I'm on are a little questionable. So that gives us a little bit of extra time together. So thank you, sweetheart. The next thing I wanted to address to you is part of the council agenda about the finances of paying for a mayor that's not being the mayor. I'm not sure what it is on the agenda. My chemo brain is a little bit beyond, or can't keep up with all the details, but this is what I want to say from my heart. Whatever you decide to do is okay with me, and I wanted to be present to say that in public so it doesn't give the appearance that the council was doing anything behind my back or trying to boot me out or anything like that. I do believe that if you choose to have my income cease, which I am fine with because I'm really not doing anything but talking to Amanda on the phone once a week and reading emails, which doesn't really equate to much of a salary. That's fine with me. So I want you to feel free to vote your convictions on that without feeling like you are undercutting me in any way. The other thing, too, is after that decision is made, I would suggest that you go into taking my income, that if you choose not to give it to me, which I recommend that you not do that, even though I don't have to say so in the matter, that you give that money to Amanda because she is doing the work of the mayor. And I think that would be a very good use of the income. And that's all. Thank you. I might leave right away, or I might stay for a couple minutes, so please understand that I'm leaving not because I'm not interested, because my stamina is a little bit compromised sometimes, even though I'm having a pretty good day today.
You look fantastic.
I feel fantastic, I really do. But what they have told me is that when you look and feel fantastic, you really need to take it slow, because if you don't, the next day is going to be a whole lot worse. So I have to, and Superman over here is the one that is my gauge for that. I think I can do anything, and he tells me that I can't, or I shouldn't. He tells me I can't do anything. He's a very intelligent man, you know. But he counsels me on what is healthy for me. So, with all that being said, thank you for your attention. Thank you again for your work.
Thank you, Gina. We'll see you again soon. All right, who is next on the agenda? Frank? Frank, if you come to the podium and state your name and address, please.
It's Frank Capella, 3901 Voltaire Drive, and the number is 917-922-8783. I just want to start by saying it's so good to see you, Jen.
Thank you.
You look great. You look great. You look fantastic. Being a writer by nature, everything that I say usually has to be written, so I hope that you guys will bear with me because there's a couple things I want to get some input on and let you all know about. So I'd like to speak about an incredible high-density map that quietly appeared on the Union County website last month. As you may know, late last year, the county commissioners passed a very controversial 650 home high-density project called Crestman. Crestman will be built on Potter Road between 84 and Newtown Road. As a reminder, the commissioners approved this project against uniform opposition, including the county's own planning board. I bring up Crestman because this new proposed development called Park Place will be situated literally right near Crestman on Willoughby Road. Park Place would be the mother of all high-density projects, 2,100 homes on 808 acres. And to give you some further perspective, Park Place would be bigger than Millbridge in Waxhaw, with more homes. Park Place would even be a little bit bigger than Brandon Oaks, or at least the same size. So that's the kind of scope we're talking about. Many of you know Potter Road and Willoughby Road are extremely narrow, two-lane country roads with chronic water runoff and flooding issues. Also, this is interesting, Park Place would be situated within the Molly Branch Creek. To give you some background, the Molly Branch dumps into the 12-mile creek system. That same creek system that severely damaged and swept away the Chanwood Road overpass twice in the past 12 months and has caused 4 water breaches on the Newtown overpass the past 13 months. This is right in our backyard. In fact, the Newtown overpass had to be rebuilt a few years ago after structural damage caused by flooding. As you can imagine, the Board of Education is extremely worried about this high-density push by the county. And some have told me that kids will be reassigned soon if we don't attempt to put a halt to this. As I'm sure you're all aware, there are massive problems with the Department of Transportation, the $300 million shortfall, and the fiscal audit that showed DOT overspent $742 million. This means that road updates will continue to lag or be non-existent, thus ensuring our area roads remain dangerous and without any improvement. This community had thought the Crestman development was outrageous and crazy at 650 homes, so there are no words to describe Park Place. I have none. This project will just be added to many other incorporated land proposals, like the one right over here off Billy Howie, which is 115 homes. It has a nice blind turn there, and another one near Puritan, which is about 800 homes. Now I'm speaking for myself here. I believe the county is counting on apathy and the continued COVID issue to tamp down any opposition to their plans. Apathy among residents is not an excuse for bad policy. It is also possible that the county might use high-density projects like this to help offset the water and sewer tax increases. You all are aware that we're going up 30% plus over the next 12 months. So I believe, and I'll just wrap this up, I believe we need a cohesive message from our community and our representatives. So I would ask the following to be considered. 1, that when appropriate, that this council renew their displeasure with high-density development and this Park Place proposal in particular, and other unincorporated high-density projects that fall within and around Wesley Chapel proper, thus making our views consistent. 2, that our council partner with the towns of Weddington and Mineral Springs to speak with one strong voice against high-density projects, especially while the roads are failing, we've got a flooding problem, we've got a runoff issue. And then 3, that council and surrounding councils might consider the possibility of putting a working group together specifically as it relates to high-density projects. As an example, the group could consist of residents of Weston Chapel, Weddington, and Mineral Springs, or even Waxhaw. A group that can help increase involvement and awareness of these high-density projects, especially projects like Park Place. The group can report to the towns, keep them in the loop on project timelines so towns can stay informed of these issues that directly affect their constituents. These are just some ideas. I know that you guys might be working on similar options. The community and I know representatives, we got to figure out a way to work together on this in hopes of stopping the county, because I think their push is real. And I think there would be, these are game changer developments that they're pushing. These are gigantic developments that will forever change this area, starting with Pressman's. So I hope we can figure out a way we can do this as a community and as a council, and I hope we can figure out to do it quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Anyone else find out for public comment?
Frank, one clarification. Did
Yes.
you say that the county planning board approved or did not approve? Recommended or did not recommend Crestman's?
Crestman's, the planning board voted against it.
Yes.
All right, and now go to additions, deletions, and adoption of agenda. Yes, sir.
I have several. As part of item 14, I'd like to do an update on where we are in survey from Amanda. As part of the Parks and Rec Committee, item 5, I'd like to do an update on our trash issue. I'd like to do an addition of the potential quorum of council at the meeting tomorrow night. And we put that anywhere you'd like.
Can we do that in council comments?
That's fine. Also like to add an item for air conditioning repair here at the town hall. Maybe we could make that item 17 and then push the other 2 down. And also somewhere, I don't know where to put it, an update from George or from whoever has the information on the land sale.
We'll do that during the finance officer's report since it talks about money.
Okay?
All right, anyone else?
Motion approved as amended.
I'll second it.
All in favor? All right, so now we have to consider approval of our consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor? John, we'll start off with your Parks and Rec Committee report.
Let's go to change. Thank you.
John, real quick, I know you just said to get you a first. Councilman, would we consider moving up item 11 while Ken is still here and could be part of the discussion?
Can we do that without resetting our agenda?
That's fine. I would just make a motion to further amend the agenda.
Would you defer your Parks and Rec Committee report to John Kim while she's here, since she may not be here for the full amount of time? Thank you, John. I appreciate
All
that.
right, we'll make a motion to put number 11.
Yeah, move number 11 up to 5 and then move everything else down.
Can you have John second?
No, I'll second.
All in favor? All right. So that takes us to the Lori's item. Lori,
So, just as we went through, I sent you guys an email, and Cheryl found my contact on, Cheryl found another, so
need to, so that we can continue the business of the county. We were very lucky this year that we were able to be outside, have some space, and then after January, be very different. And I feel like that it shouldn't just be a blanket statement, but the council should really have to consider each and every meeting to make sure that we're not kind of going too far. And so the document that I sent was around amending Rule 2 to enable electronic meeting. Currently, Rule 2 is about people not participating remotely. For council members that, if you were to call in and listen, you'd be part of the meeting vote. So what I put out to you guys was two proposals. One just changes where we can do a virtual meeting if the state of emergency is called for the statute on a decision basis, or option 2, which is option 1 plus retaining use of verbiage that people participate in the debate remotely that are not be part of the forum. That is sort of written now. That was just what I was trying to get to.
Lori, my biggest question on this is how does the John Q. Public resident participate?
Well, that's what we will have to ensure that, because of the language in here that ensures that we make sure we comply with those meetings. So that means you would have to secure either a teleconference or Facebook Live or whatever other groups are also doing to make sure that those meetings can be public, and that information would have to be publicized.
George, any input or legal?
The statutes were amended to allow electronic meetings and not violate the open meetings laws during this pandemic, and so that's what Laura is referring to when she's talking about the new statutes that provided. Some of this is new. There was a trend towards this. We've talked about this within the last couple of years about whether or not to allow remote access, and there's been a trend toward that. There's still some open questions about what is, to your point, what is public access and what is allowed, and how that looks, and how participation by council members is governed. For example, Lori mentioned quorum. Most experts believe, and I agree with them, that people that are participating electronically, other than under this pandemic statute, now I'm talking about any kind of electronic meeting, shouldn't be counted for purposes of quorum. You need to do things like take a roll call right before a vote so that you know that people are not abstaining on purpose. Maybe their connection has a problem. Some kind of constant things to make sure people are still engaged in their connections online. So that's a long way of saying it's allowable. There may be some, if you're going to do it knowing there may be some bumps in the road and figuring out some of those details.
And the School of Government did say straight up, no quasi-judicial and no public hearing.
Right.
That was more along the lines of what I was looking for, but okay, thanks.
They did say, quasi-judicial and public hearings would be different. I think I heard you say public hearings too. So quasi-judicial, definitely a big question mark, and I would advise against that. Public hearings on legislative matters, I don't think are as problematic because you're not taking sworn testimony and you're not acting as a judge/juror.
So if we enact this would be to keep the doors open, keep it down to a minimum of what we could or couldn't do remotely. We wouldn't be discussing some of the other stuff that we're going to be discussing tonight remotely. Is that the intent?
No, the intention is that we can continue governing the village even in these times. And while, there's a comment about public hearings, like tonight you have a public hearing about annexation and that no one needs to speak about that. So I think it does become a matter of what is on the agenda, and us being smart about what we put on the agenda so we can keep the business going. But it's not about trying to limit people's participation. It's about trying to abide by and keep people safe. It's the intention. And to make it to where that the last time, or when this happened, and we don't believe it was the last time, jurisdictions and everybody were jumping through all kinds of hoops trying to figure out what to do and how to do it. And I don't want to get in that position again. I want us to have a plan to be able to know what we can do.
So this would be like in case there was a second wave of COVID and we all got put back in the shelter at home and council decided it was not safe. That's my question. It says, George, that we canvass council to determine a majority and then we could just formally vote at the of the virtual
I
meeting?
send this to you. I wrote it in the language, I just realized I
Okay.
didn't send it to you, I'm so sorry.
You mean for purposes of determining who's there and that their connections exist and all that kind of
No,
stuff?
I told Lori that my reservation with it would be that I think every virtual meeting should be decided on by council majority as to whether there was a need for virtual. So say there is something that happened,
I see.
we don't just automatically go to a virtual meeting. The mayor or acting mayor will call around and say, y'all cool virtually or you want to meet in person? And then whatever we decide, if we did decide virtual, at the beginning of the meeting, we would, I don't know, make it public that we all agreed to do it virtually? I don't know.
Yeah, that part's tough, I guess, because in some ways you're already conducting a meeting by making the determination to have the meeting electronically, right?
This is like, how do we do this in a way that we can make a call each time? We don't want it just because there's a state of emergency, we automatically go to virtual.
I mean, you could do it. This may be more layers than is necessary, but I think this would work where you would call a special electronic meeting. You know, if you have a policy that authorizes you to do all this stuff, then under that policy, you would call a special meeting to confirm, to vote on whether or not to have a full electronic meeting. Does that make sense?
So we can call a special electronic meeting to say, yes, we will hold our next regularly scheduled meeting as an electronic meeting.
Yeah, I think that may be the only way to do it to clearly comply with all the laws as they sit right now. It seems kind of silly to have to go through that step, but I think that might be necessary under this scenario you're talking about, where it's not an automatic. We're having an electronic meeting, or I guess you could do the reverse and say it is automatic unless a special meeting is called, or there's a vote that declines to have an electronic meeting. I'm just trying to think through how that would work.
David, your thoughts?
Two things. I've got a question. How many times since the village has been incorporated have we not had a meeting due to a state of emergency?
Last month, that was it.
One, I think we're going through a lot of dialogue and a lot of conversation for things that may happen. Let me finish. I also think that we owe it to the residents that we represent to be able to see them face to face and as many times as possible. And I'm worried that if we open this door to an electronic meeting, that we may have a tendency, as all humans do, to become lazy and depend on that more so than we should. That's number one. Number two, Lori, I read your rule number 2 amendment that was sent out yesterday. So I don't know how much that changes the information that you shared earlier in the week. But I'm not prepared to vote on this without reading through that and digesting that if it has a major impact on the information that was sent out earlier.
Yeah, the gist of it is if there is a state of emergency, that's the first big step. If they call the state of emergency, then we have the option to do a virtual meeting. Like what George said, we would call a special electronic meeting, say, yes, now we're going to have a virtual meeting. We have to do that for each meeting. We can't just be a blanket statement, it's going to be virtual. And we have to make sure the public has access to the meeting, whether that's in a Zoom call or whatever.
That's more information than I can digest right now. So I will make a motion that we table this until next month until we get all the information, until I have all the information that we've received to look through that. Receiving it yesterday did not give me enough time to look through it.
One thing I'd like to add is we did have one case in the last, this goes back about 7 years, where a council member was in England and they Skyped in to the meeting. What are your feelings on that? They were part of the meeting, but did they or did they not vote, Cheryl?
Mm-hmm.
They did vote? Okay. That was the first time it's ever happened that we did a Skype call for a council member. And then we've had, of course, the last meeting, because of the pandemic, out on the back patio, 6 feet apart. So,
But it was still a meeting that took place.
right, and people could have come and participated.
People did.
And some people did, exactly.
I think we're setting a precedent. So whenever I'm seeing the attendance policy in the past confused by council members, So, Lori, are you okay if we table this and let George and David review it?
That's perfectly fine. The sure put the package out a little sooner than I expected with George's input and everything else. So, understand that you need more time to look at it, but I just feel very strongly. I do not like being reactive. I like to be proactive, and that's where this is coming from. So that we have means in place when we need to continue the business of the village. So that's the intention.
And maybe we could work on the language about the special meeting. Okay, so that moves into the second part of Lori's agenda item.
There is a motion on the table.
So a motion to delay that item until next month. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All right, so the second part of Lori's agenda item.
This was regarding the fact that a year or two ago, the council changed the rules of procedure so that if a member of council missed more than 2 meetings, then their pay would be prorated for their actual attendance. And in reviewing that language, council is the four of us, not the mayor. And I believe the council's intention when they passed this was to be mayor and council. That if anyone missed more than 2, then it would be prorated. So that's part one. And then the second part is in the situation that when we have someone step up to be temporary mayor, such as Amanda's doing now, that they would go from their council pay to the mayor pay. And I realize there's some restrictions on changing pay ourselves within the thing, but it's about getting it in there so that it's what I think is fair.
I agree.
And like Jan said, we're okay with whatever. It's not like it's a huge stipend. It doesn't cover this.
It's needed.
Just kidding.
And we're not getting rich doing this job, just so you guys know.
I thought that was yet to come. I thought that was yet to come.
No, never going to happen.
So that, as someone who was on council, Mike and I can both speak to, we did mean for it to imply both council and mayor. We were all of us pretty united, well, some of us united unit thinking that if you miss multiple meetings, you should not get paid.
I'll motion that we approve Lori's recommendation on changes.
Do we have the changes? I'm not sure what the changes
Yes,
exactly
the
are.
change would be in the verbiage.
To include,
To wherever it references council does not get paid, it's mayor and council. So that's the first step. And then the second one is I do think I have that written up, and was that in the event the temporary mayor would be paid at the mayor rate. Mayor rate, whatever the right verbiage is.
or do you want to put a time limit into there? Because if a mayor misses one meeting, the mayor pro tem has to step in. Is that the situation, or is it going to be?
It's a real temporary mayor,
Okay.
such as what's happened now. Jan said, I need to step aside, not just that you step up to the position for a meeting.
Do you want to put 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, any kind of?
I don't think Cheryl can change the pay until the mayor is not paid. So like Jan, I thought this would be her meeting that she did. She would still get paid for it. No, she would get paid for this meeting, because we didn't meet in April. So she would not be paid after a meeting. Isn't that correct, Cheryl?
I'm sorry.
You were here in March? No, you were not here.
She was here in January and February. She missed March, but she got paid for the first quarter
Okay. So
because she didn't have 2 absences.
I just like to make sure that when I come back, I still get paid.
Yes.
Is that
We
the
have a part of this.
So, if I may,
Sure.
I think this crosses into the area. I had emailed some stuff and then kind of had a follow-up email about the issue how the statutes regarding pay treat council members and mayors differently, and that during a mayor's term, at least arguably, the statutes don't allow a reduction in salary. So I think what you were just talking about would reduce Jan's salary during her term, because her term doesn't end until after this year. So that would have what you're talking about. If you wanted to apply during the remainder of Jan's term, I think would require Jan to consent to it. And then with respect to this year for council members, I think that could be effective, but it would have to be effective beginning July 1 because of the budget year, budget process.
But we could put it in the rules of procedure for the mayor for the future.
Yes. Right. It wasn't clear to me what was intended. So, yes, because what that would cover would be the mayor. In the future, a mayor is elected, and the mayor's salary is set, but the mayor's salary is subject to an already adopted policy. So the mayor's salary is covered within all of that.
So is your advice to wait?
Well, I just don't think you can do. I don't think you can do the current part, which is reduce Jan's salary, without Jan okaying it. So, and then I don't think you can do the second part with respect to current council members until beginning of July 1 with the new budget year.
What would I have to do to get consent? Is that what we do?
No, I think you can do it at this meeting or a future meeting.
That means that Jan still needs to go pay for June. It's so.
I'm so confused.
Yes. Yeah.
So we can make it effective July 1 with the new budget year, and wherever it says council, it says mayor and council.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 missed meetings will be prorated. And that could be effective after July.
Right.
So that means that Jan would continue to receive her pay until July, and then if she misses July and August, for example, for those 2 after that, it would be prorated.
No, because that's still during
That's
her. That's still during her term, right? So
Okay.
even that each of you doesn't have to consent to that.
Yes.
But because mayors are treated differently statutorily than council members, that scenario would require Jan's consent.
I think we do add it to the rules of procedure because I think that was our intent 2 years ago or a year ago whenever we had that.
And I think and I'm okay if we wait until the next mayor to implement it, but I think holistically that was the intention.
Absolutely.
And I'm okay waiting.
And then the other thing about the temporary mayor, I think it's fine too. We wait to enact that when we have new council. If we think that things turns out, that's perfectly fine. But I do think in fairness, when we have a situation like this again, that's our recommendation.
So the thinking is we're gonna update the rules of procedure to say council and mayor pay, and it will just be effective for the next mayoral run.
Well, I mean, again, I think you could make it effective July 1. You just have to know that you can't apply it to Jan unless you consent, but it can apply to all the council members, starting with the July meeting.
On our laptop.
Yeah.
Yeah, we already got that one.
Right.
All right, so we need a motion again.
Well, first, I've got 2 thoughts. Number 1, I think we all put in more time than our pay per month mandate.
Reflects it.
Yes, that we do. And I think you can make the case that either mayor or acting mayor probably puts in double the amount of time that all of us do. That's number 1. And I would be against prorating. I would be against pulling in the mayor onto the same status as council right now. I just think that the mayor puts in that much more time that if they're not able to make meetings, then we've got problems. Number 2, I think this is a terrible, terrible time for us to be discussing adjusting the pay of a mayor that is fighting cancer. And I think this is terrible time. I will vote against both of them.
Sure. Thank you. It's wonderful. And it touches my heart. It really does. And the reason I came tonight is to make sure that people didn't think that it was being done behind the back. It really was kind of my idea that I had talked about it and asked for it to be brought forward. But I respect your feelings. I really do. if you need my consent, I don't know what I have to do to give it, but I give it. And if you choose not to do it, so be it. I will spend the money well. I will spend the money well.
I'm okay leaving it like it is for Jan, because since we can't change the mayors, but I do believe that the council's intent a year ago was to prevent misuse. I mean, we all know what we're talking about here, but to prevent somebody from not showing up and just collecting a paycheck, because there was no method to hold people accountable to the system. And when we talked about it, it was to hold the mayor and council members accountable for being present to the public. So I would be okay amending rules of procedure that would become effective for the next mayoral election. And we also need to update our rules of procedure. We really need a work session. We're going to probably spend some time on this, because those are a little bit
Jagged.
complicated.
Yeah.
So we can or we can just table it and have a work session this fall and address it then. So
Tabling it and doing a work session this fall to address the entire rules of procedure. Cheryl?
I just want to point out that you cannot change any mayor or council pay after the budget has been adopted, so that would be one of the reasons why it was on tonight's agenda, and it was on the agenda before the budget was adopted.
that's awesome.
So in other words, if you do something in September or October, it won't be effective for another year.
Well, but it would still hold council accountable for missing meetings.
Exactly.
Which
Which is not in there. But it would clean up the verbiage and address any future situations happening in the next budget.
And I think that should be a goal of all councils, to leave your rules of procedure stronger when you encounter them.
I just think the current issues that we're dealing with are once in a lifetime. We know that we have to do these things. And who would know? And for such a time as this, obviously this council does it well, and we're going to do it and get it right.
And I think that's part of our problem is we were so burned our last 4 years that we are trying to be very proactive and not letting the system get abused when these 5 people aren't here anymore.
Right.
So we want to table this until our rules procedure, have a work session maybe this fall when Jan's back.
Mike had made a motion.
I'll rescind it.
Mike rescinds his motion.
I'll
You want to
I
make a
don't
motion?
think it was ever seconded anyway.
It wasn't true.
You want to make a vote?
Motion to table this for future council meeting. Hopefully shortly.
Second. All in favor?
Who did the second? Thank you.
All right, so that moves us on to John. The real this time.
Good morning again, Council.
Give me a second.
Great to see you again.
Good to see you again.
So Parks and Recreation have a regularly scheduled meeting. The focus of the conversation is really around the budget proposal and the discussion we have with Council about changes to the budget. It's essentially change the outlook for the next fiscal year. So we discussed what was remaining in this year's budget and things we needed to do that we may not be able to do in the next fiscal budget. So we talked about the state of the upper walking trail. It's in need of some repair with pick, gravel, riprap. And to do that we need to rent a bobcat. Mike would kindly drive a bobcat for us again to get those repairs effective. So we are proposing that you allow us from this year's budget to rent a skid steer year purchase pit gravel and riprap to get that done. We also discussed the deficiencies we've identified with the sound system and balance that with the fact that we will be having a limited number of events this year. So the two deficiencies we identified with the sound system, one was when we had the Christmas event, we were unable to mic a choir. But since we won't be having a Christmas event this year, we decided there's no need to fix that deficiency right now. So the next Christmas event would be Christmas 2021, and we'd be in the 2021-2022 budget cycle, so we don't need to address it during this year. The other deficiency we've identified is that performers on the stage can't hear themselves because the sound system pushes the sound out to the audience. We only have 2 monitors, so only 2 of the performers can hear themselves. So we're suggesting the purchase of 2 additional monitors. These numbers came to you because the agenda items due before we have the Parks and Rec meeting and we drop the microphones out. So the actual cost of 2 additional monitor speakers would be $1,400. They're actually $699.99 each, $1,400 plus tax. That's the list price. We might be able to negotiate a little bit of discount off that. But we're suggesting we fix that deficiency because we will be having music performances before the next fiscal year. We have something like, was it $3,000 show in sound system maintenance?
No, that's actually sound system services, so that wouldn't be the right.
What I mean. Sound system services, and we're suggesting perhaps we can move some of that money from sound system services into capital outlay to buy the additional 2 monitors. So that's it basically on the things we discussed. A couple of other items, one more item that's come up since then that might involve some cost is the dam. The rear side of the dam is not included in the maintenance contract. It's become considerably overgrown. Historically, we've taken care of that with volunteers. It hasn't been done in a while, and we're starting to get decent-sized trees growing on it again. It's got to the stage where I don't think volunteers could really do it. The North Carolina dam maintenance recommendations are to keep that pretty clear-cut. You don't want trees growing in it, because if a tree blows over and it pulls up the root mass, it weakens the dam. So I reached out to our current maintenance contractor for a quote to do the clearing of the backside of the dam, which is in addition to his current contract. He said it'd be $1,850. That would come out of this year's contract services, which I think we have plenty of money in to cover that. Cheryl, how much have we got left in that?
You could do the park maintenance contractor services.
Yeah,
that
so
would be one
there's
place.
plenty of money in there to do that. I also asked him what it would cost to add an ongoing service to prevent it getting in the current condition. He said he thinks it needs to be bush hogged about 3 times a year. It would be $250 per service to bush hog it. So that would be $750 in addition. As you will know, we've proposed a 5% increase in the current park maintenance contract, so that would more than cover it, so we don't need to change anything, I don't think.
John, can we make that part of the new contract?
What I suggest we do, if council agrees to that expense going forward, it will be in the next fiscal year. An additional $750 maintenance expense. We would probably issue an amendment to the scope of work in the contract and just say, okay, in addition to the current contract, you are now going to add 3 services for bush hogging the backside of the dam, and you will be compensated $250 per service.
But see, he still hasn't asked for a new contract, right?
No. We're just laying that all along because we don't want to take a surprise. So I have not discussed that with the Parks and Rec Committee because they only just came up. The past week I've been at the park an awful lot. Some great news for council. A 90-year-old lady in Waxhaw offered to donate us a bunch of flowers to the park. She has an incredible garden. 2 ladies from the Weddington Garden Club went over there, dug all the plants up and brought them to the park, and we've now got them planted in the ground. Then another lady stepped up and said, "Hey, I've got a bunch of roses. Do you want some roses?" So I went over and dug them up out of the yard and we got rose planted. So there seems to be this ball starting to roll where people are offering to donate all these beautiful plants to the park. So we've been there a lot last week, a lot more than usual. A couple other things came up because I'm interacting with more visitors to the park. We had a complaint about the trash, which I mentioned. The trash cans were overflowing. Cheryl and I reached out to the landscaper who was responsible for emptying the trash cans. I was thinking, we need more frequent service, or we need more trash cans. We need to do something because we have so many new visitors to the park, bringing Chick-fil-A and McDonald's and pizza. But it turns out the guy was short-staffed, the contractor was short-staffed last week, and his guys missed emptying the trash cans. So it may not be an ongoing problem, it may just be an anomaly in that his guys didn't get around to emptying the trash cans. So we will monitor that situation this week through next weekend. And if we see trash cans again overflowing, we'll come back to council and we're going to have to address it with either more frequent emptying of trash cans, which young Michael over here takes on himself sometimes, and together we've dumped trash cans into the dumpster, but that's not a long-term solution. The silver lining, I think, about everything, we've got way more visitors coming to the park. People are discovering it the first time and really liking what they're seeing. The one other thing that came up while I was visiting the park, complaints from fishermen that we have way too many turtles in the pond and they're eating all the bait and they can't catch any fish because the turtles keep pulling the bait off the hooks.
So you have a turtle catching contest?
So the gentleman who was complaining said he'd seen people at Lake Park actually with scuba divers removing turtles, but he didn't know the name of the service. With Cheryl's connection with Lake Park, she reached out to Lake Park and they are not aware of anybody who provided a service to remove turtles. But, I took a look at the pond and we've got an awful lot of turtles in there. So I don't know if down the road we're going to have to address that, but fishermen aren't having a good time right now because the turtles are stealing all of it.
Here's your park fundraiser. Turtles $5 a piece.
So the spending requests are in there. It's pit gravel, riprap, and rental of a bobcat to effect the repairs. It's $1,400 to purchase 2 additional monitors. And it's out of the contract maintenance, contractor services budget this year, $1,850 to clear the back of the dam. And then we will modify the maintenance scope of work for the next fiscal year to include 3 services to keep the dam clear.
I just got a question for you, Joe. You want to clear this part up first?
Sorry?
You want to clear up these items first?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we approve the rental of the Bobcat to do trail repairs not to exceed $1,500.
We're going to take one more.
Well, can we rather do one at a time, or?
You don't have 1,500, so you need to move money before you do
That's
that.
why I wanted to do one at a time.
Well, you would need to move 200 to rentals for that part.
Okay. So the motion will be to request council to approve rental of the skid steer and do $200 in the rental, not to exceed $1,500, and I will tell you it will be less than that.
Second. Discussion?
Your best guess on
typically get the Bobcat for 2 weekends and a week in between, so it's a 7 to 9 day period that we'll have it, and they give us a week rate. The week rate is going to be less than $1,400, but by the time you have to put diesel back into it and any other costs associated with it. So not to exceed the $1,500 on the rental for a week's rental.
Cheryl, when do you need receipts by for the end of the year? Because this would have to be done before June 30th.
Mm-hmm. June 30th.
June 30th? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be done in the next 2 weeks, right?
Next 2 weeks.
All in favor? Or that? All in favor?
The next motion will be to approve the purchase of materials not to exceed $1,000 for pit gravel, riprap. I was just going to say stone. It's generally pit gravel that we get, so not to exceed $1,000 in materials.
That's a motion.
Motion.
And you also need the funding for that one.
Approve the. Where do we have to move the money from, Cheryl?
Moved at least 300 to other supplies and materials from the park maintenance contractor.
John, didn't you have an idea of that? On where to pull the money from?
Yeah, from what Cheryl suggested, from a contractor, park maintenance.
So park maintenance and move the money from
Park maintenance contractor to some go into rentals and some go into other supplies and materials. One to cover the rental and one to cover the material.
That'll be the motion, not to exceed $1,000, and again, it probably will not be $1,000.
Do I have a second? Discussion? All in favor? All right.
Third motion will be to approve up to $1,400. John, you're going to do your best to try to get us a discount on the 2 monitors, and these will match the existing monitors we have.
Exactly the same as the existing.
Okay. Approve up to $1,400 for the 2 monitors for the sound equipment for the stage.
And move the money from the sound system services to the capital outlay.
Yeah. And when you're done with that, we've got one more comment on the sound system services thing that council asked me to look into.
So the motion will be to approve the up to $1,400 spend with the money coming from the account Cheryl recommends.
Do I have a second? Discussion?
Yes. And tell me again, John, why we need the 2 additional monitors.
Sorry?
Tell me again why we need the 2 additional monitors.
When performers are on the stage playing,
How many performers? Are we talking large group or are we talking?
You got 4 people is typical in the bands we've had play in the past. The 2 monitors up front allow the 2 front performers to hear themselves, and the complaints have been from the guys in the back who can't hear what they're playing. Because the PA system pushes the sound out to the audience, they're behind it and they can't hear what they're playing. And in order for them to play professionally, they need to hear what they're playing. And so we only have 2 right now, and the suggestion is to buy 2 more so the back of the stage can hear what they're playing.
And if those 2 in the back had in-ears, would that overcome the problem that they're having?
What would overcome it?
In-ears?
There are in-ear monitors, but we'd have to purchase those instead.
As opposed to them providing their own?
I don't know.
It's not always 4 people playing in a band, sometimes it's more. We've had, when the church used the band show, I think they had a group of 6 or 7 players, and then there's the singer.
Right.
So
Sometimes we have 1, sometimes it's 3.
If this money would come from which one?
Sound equipment services, we have a budget for that we haven't spent, and the suggestion is to move it from the services to the sound equipment capital outlay.
And what's the current balance?
We don't have anything.
We don't have it.
In the sound services balance, so
We have almost 3,000.
3,000. I'm suggesting we move 1,400 from that 3,000 to the capital outlay.
and tell us what your concern is.
My same concern that I shared whenever we did the budget planning, and I realize this is coming out of this fiscal year, not next year. We've got 2 events scheduled for next year. Wow, 3.
Well, the Easter event, we won't be playing sound system out.
We've got 2 events that will occur the sound system. Wireless one is going down.
It was probably something we should have invested in with the initial outlay of the equipment. We didn't know that we didn't have enough until we actually set it up the first time, used it a few times before we realized it was deficient. Next item, the repairs to the dam. John, if you're sure that we can roll in the regular maintenance to the new contract for the landscaper, I'll make a motion that we spend the $1,850 to do the initial clearing of the dam. I will also point out that the state mandates how we take care of an earthen dam. It's like an 18-page document that we have to follow.
It's more than 18 pages.
Yeah. There's a lot of state mandate regulations as far as what you can and cannot do with an earthen dam. And one thing you can't do is let stuff grow on it. For the reason John said, if a tree grows and falls over and pulls a big root ball out, the dam can fail, which is why we've been trying over the last few years to keep it to a minimum amount of weeds. But that minimum amount of weeds has grown up to substantial small trees now. So the motion will be to approve just the initial $1,850
from this year's contractor services budget.
Okay. Discussion?
I mean, I'd love to do this with volunteers and chainsaws and weed whackers and everything else, but John and I have both done it 3 times, and it's a good. I mean, it takes us all day and a couple of 3 chainsaws and a couple of 3 weed whackers and I'm in a down spin.
All right. Any more discussion? All in favor? All right, and then John, before you step down, will you tell us about the playground and the paving contract this first?
Sure. The paving contractor is behind several weeks because of all the rain. He's aware we want to keep the park closure to a minimum. We don't have a schedule from him yet. He was suggesting we leave it until after the playground, and I'm like, no. The playground's going to take a lot longer than resurfacing, so we are still waiting for a response to the request for a schedule, which was sent out at the end of last week. I haven't heard back from him yet. I believe they're having a scheduling meeting on Wednesday this week, and he said he would have more information for us on Wednesday with regard to the schedule and we can do the work.
John, would you consider having to do like the paved trails around the lake on one day and then the parking lot on a different day? Or do you want to?
I'm going to leave the scheduling, but I might, there.
I don't know how much they can get done in a single day.
I told him we don't want to have the park closed for 6 days straight. He said, you won't have to, don't worry, we'll figure it out. So I'm like, well, can you give me a schedule of when you need the park closed, how long you need it closed for? They're the people doing the work and they know it better. I don't want to dictate to them how to do their job, so I'm waiting for them to come back to me and say, this is when I need the park closed.
And why did they say wait until after the playground was finished?
They were concerned with heavy equipment moving over uncured sealant. I understand that.
So why would we want to wait so that we don't spend this money and then damage it, perhaps in short order? Especially if it's not hot. I would expect the cure time to be
They
short.
said the curing time is a matter of days.
We're not bringing in concrete trucks. We're not bringing in that. I mean,
But I think the heaviest piece of equipment that will be brought into the playground is going to be a hot cap.
Are they going to get this paving completed and invoiced by June 30th?
I've asked them.
Because if it isn't, we might as well wait and do it next year.
we don't have a budget for next year. We've got it in this year's budget.
We haven't approved the budget yet, so.
Yeah. John,
I'll know more on Wednesday when he said they have a scheduling meeting and we're going to discuss it. I've expressed the urgency, I've asked him not to delay, and he can't answer till he meets with
let him know that our governmental red tape requires that he gets it done by July 1st. Or we're going to have to restir the pot, and he may not like that. He may not like the results of that.
And the impression we have, we got so much work right now, I don't think he really can.
Do we know when the playground, I'm sorry. Do we know when the playground is going to get started?
The play, we don't have a schedule on that either. The order has been placed with the factory. We're still waiting on COI. George, have you heard anything on the COI? We need the COI from the sub. They're aware of that. They've told us they will get us a COI from the sub.
Well, we also need an amended contract, right, George? When we ever find out who is actually putting in the playgrounds.
Right. Well, I know they've been to the site very recently with the subcontractor, and we've sent an email saying we need the COI, we need this, and they said we know what you want, we're working on it.
I haven't gotten any response.
Does council need to approve that amended contract?
I
mean,
the dollar amount is
I guess it wouldn't hurt to understand that and approve that the liability insurance is coming from the subcontractors rather than the general contractor. I don't know that that's necessary, but certainly it wouldn't hurt to understand it and approve of that.
It's tentatively approved now, pending the paperwork.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd just be accepting a certificate of insurance from the subcontractor doing the work that satisfies what you normally would require from a general contractor.
I was under the impression the general contractor, we seem to be going into the minutiae here with contractor, general contractor, the guy holding the shovel at the end of the fence.
Well, I mean, if you want a playground built without insurance, I mean, Mike, the problem is that the general contractor cannot be insured for liability insurance, and your request for proposals and your contract require the provision of insurance from the contractor, and he can't provide it, and he sent a certificate of insurance that didn't cover the work that was being done.
All right.
So do we need to make a motion tonight that we understand and accept that we'll be getting a certificate of insurance from the
I don't think it's necessarily required, but it can't hurt.
Motion to approve pending the required paperwork submissions.
Okay, so this motion is just about the accept the certificate of insurance for the playground.
From the sub rather than the general contractor.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? All right, and then John, I think there was one other item about the sound system before we move on, and that was the warranty that we had asked you to look into.
Yes. So you asked us to look into the warranty, and we looked through the manual. I think in this case, I sent an email today to you guys. We need George's opinion on this. There doesn't appear to be anything in the manual that says warranty is dependent upon. There is a recommendation by the manufacturer in the manual that says recommends an annual inspection, but it doesn't say it's absolutely necessary.
Does it say the inspection is to be done by Guitar Center?
No, it says that did be done by a JBL authorized service.
So we need to
So it says they recommend annual inspection. That's what it is. Then in the warranty, there is an exclusion that says it ain't covered in the event of neglect. So the question is, if you don't inspect it as they recommend in the manual, can they deny a warranty claim for neglect because you failed to inspect it?
I haven't reviewed it, but I would make that argument if I were on the other side.
Right, so it wasn't clear to me because it doesn't say warranty is void if you don't have an annual inspection. It doesn't say it. It says we recommend you have an annual inspection, and then there's an exclusion saying, is services done by anybody who is not a JBL authorized service organization.
Have we had any problems with the sound system since we purchased it?
Absolutely not.
And we've only got, I'm guessing, 12, 15 hours total on the system to begin with.
We've had it out 3 times so far since new. We plan to have it out 2 more times. So we did not have it inspected yet. We're coming up to the 12-month period now. It's 12 months of age. The question was related to next year's budget. Do we need to leave money in the sound system service line for that inspection? So you asked me, does it affect the warranty? I'm telling you what the documents say. I don't know if...
So we'll get it to George and then we'll make a
Well,
decision.
I'd like to point out, this is commercial grade equipment that was designed to be purchased and used, for example, at the baseball field.
It was.
Every weekend for 8 hours a day for, Friday, Saturday, Sunday games, and then all of a sudden we purchased it, which is fine.
And it does refer to installed equipment. So the recommendation is, for installed equipment, they recommend the annual inspection. I don't know if installed means you purchased it, or installed means it's actually installed in a facility, which ours obviously isn't. It's stored in dust-proof,
Air conditioning.
moisture-proof, air-conditioned. So,
Alright, so I'll have Amy forward that to George.
I sent it to you, Mike, and Cheryl, with copies of the documents.
And we'll report back. So George, I'll email that to you. And then we'll report back with that.
I think it's really a legal question in the language of the documents, and a technical question.
Anything else, John?
No, just great news about the flowers. I'm hoping to get that ball rolling even more, continue to beautify the park and help us the village.
So John, on the playground, what is the ballpark schedule? 30 days, 60 days?
In the contract it says 4 to 6 weeks of delivery of the equipment. So the equipment's been ordered, so we should be hearing any date soon that it's produced and they're going to ship it. And then from arrival on site, it's 2 weeks installation.
In the insurance.
So I'm confident before the end of July that we're going to have a playground. And I'll be asking you guys to organize an opening, COVID restrictions allowing.
Cheryl, will we have to do things with moving the money since it's not going to happen by the end of the fiscal year?
I'll make sure that's fixed. I have a question though, and now I have forgot it. Oh, I know what it was. We don't have builder's risk insurance, and I know this isn't a building, but if they bring equipment there and somebody steals it or messes it up,
I haven't seen their policy. Don't know what it would cover. I think their liability policy wouldn't cover that. I assume it wouldn't insure the village for theft of those items. So.
We had a similar incident when we built the park, where one of the subcontractors, I think it was the landscaper, brought 2 or 3 truckloads of bushes to the park that were supposed to be placed in various places, and 5 of them disappeared, 6 of them disappeared. And we told the general contractor, he said, it happens, and the landscaper picked up the difference and replaced the bushes.
In this case, that bid excludes any cover for the equipment once it's delivered to the site.
So you're about hauling off a slide or
yeah, if that happens, it's on us.
build something around it.
So Cheryl, do you want to look into that for us?
I know that we don't have builder's risk, so I know this isn't building a building. Like when we did this town hall, we had to get a special policy because we didn't have builder's risk, and our insurance does not offer builder's risk. We had to go elsewhere.
I'm
not sure what to do.
Not outside of my expertise. I don't even know if builder's risk insurance is available for something like this, or if there's
it's
rider.
like weird.
If there's a rider that's available to cover that kind of thing, if you want to get it covered, I don't know.
Will you look into it and report back?
I'll check with our insurance.
I would assume they're going to be working during the day after the equipment arrives, and then after sundown, the park gate's locked anyway, and they're not going to be able to steal that playground equipment without a big truck. So I don't know how they get the truck in to steal it if they did.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, John. We appreciate it.
Lastly, park, so we did some general repairs to the fishing pier, we did some general repairs to some picnic tables, and we did some general repairs to the dog park. All registered receipts for lumber and whatnot were turned into show.
Thank you, Mike. We appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
Part of my healing is to walk, and I've been walking the park little bits at a time, back and forth. And I noticed that the benches have been finished. They look fabulous.
Boy Scouts and I took care of them on Saturday. It actually took 2 weekends. One weekend we partially washed them, and then the next weekend we sanded them and restained them.
And they really look very professionally done, and they look very welcoming to people who would come. The signage that I saw looked very temporary about the program, and I might suggest that would be put up a little bit more permanently because it's on these wobbly stakes.
And we're also getting more signage that will be delivered.
And in my walk, I met a gentleman from Indian Trail, and he was very, very complimentary of our park. And I thanked him for using the facility, and I introduced myself as the mayor, and in my exercise, and he was very, very, very complimentary. He said it comes every day. So I know that we don't have a lot of big things in our company, that's the capital, but I think one of the gems we have is the park, and I think,
Moved here so I could hear
and
you.
John, to John's committee for making that happen so that we know there's something really positive, something really good in the area. So,
And just so everybody knows, we will be putting caution, playground equipment, picnic table and stuff is not sanitized. Just use at your own risk. They're bright yellow to help. Yes, sir.
Amanda, I have a very quick question. These all look at me. How does one make a donation to the park? I use it all the time, the best. Mike and I have spoken about this. What is the best way to do?
Write us a check. Write us a check.
As you mentioned,
That's the park and rec.
that's what it was. I'm
Western
sorry.
Chapel Friends of Parks and Rec would be your best bet, because once that money goes to them, that money can only be spent in one place, the park. You can't get subdirected into some other project, which tends to happen.
The problem is anybody running Friends of Park and Rec right now.
But
Summer and the organization still exists. They're just not currently active.
Yeah, who do I looked it up and there was no.
if you give us a check and you say it's a donation to be used at the park, it will be reserved for use at the park.
Okay. That's it.
The current project Wesley Chapel Friends of Parks and Rec is doing is they're purchasing and donating to us a water fountain. Freestanding water fountain that also has a little side thing for the dogs and a hose connection, and they've got that all work. We have to install it, but it's like $2,800. It's not a cheap little treatment fountain. So.
All right.
Thank you, Frank, and the village appreciates your.
I go there all the time. I love it. I love it.
I do too.
It's Jan's right. It's great, and I have seen. I've been up there 3 weekends in a row. It's a lot of people.
All right, good.
One of the things that I have noticed about COVID is that with these masks on, it's really hard to hear everybody, and I'm having a hard time hearing some of you in the audience. So I just wanted to just tell you, it's just crazy that you can't see someone's lips, and it's like you go deaf or something. The Communications Committee met May 21st here. Just for your information, you were talking about Zooming, and I'm in a writers group, and we meet every other Monday. We Zoom, And they announce it publicly on their Facebook page. You click on it, and anybody who clicks on it is automatically in the meeting. So it takes care of the public announcement, and then it's open to the public. And we have like 9 members, and all our faces are up there. So I was going to do that with a communications meeting, but since we were able to come here, we just came here because I know there's glitches trying to be worked out with the Zoom meeting. So, but anyway, it works really well with this writing document. We did meet in May here, and Amanda, even though she's doing double duty as mayor and doing a great job, and she and her role as council liaison came to our meeting, and I was really appreciated. She had some really good things to offer, so I appreciate you coming. One more thing on my plate. These are the photos for the mayors that we've done. If you can see these, I thought they turned out really well. Because of COVID, we haven't talked to the other mayors. I've got all their names, thanks to Cheryl. She gave me all the names of She gave me all the names of the other mayors that we had, and so until we get more, it's just going to look weird to have just 2. So we're going to put them in the cabinet, and we're also going to get some little name tags and stuff that goes on with these other 3 photos that we've done and have framed. We've got the Wesley Temple Baptist Church, and we put that over there. And then we did the cemetery and the cotton field. And we're going to get, once we get them all up and everything, we're going to get little name tags that tell us what they are, where they are, and everything. So, the next ones we're going to try to get some of those flowers and do some more of the park here. We want to do more of the park, so we're going to try to get those done this month. And I think I have a volunteer to help me get those posted up on the wall. The village Facebook page has been posting COVID-19 reminders and other important updates about twice a week. We're trying to at least do twice a week on those. And I really appreciate being included in Mayor Fuller's, Acting Mayor Fuller's announcements. She gives me updates from the county, so I can post those on the Facebook page. And the most recent post was concerning the Epcot community holding its meeting tomorrow night. So that was our most recent one that we posted. Our vice chair, communications vice chair, Tammy Boyce, manages the village Instagram account, and she says that we have up to 40 followers now. So she's doing a really good job. She manages that page.
Yeah, on the notice you put out about the 650 Christians development going on, did you specifically say in that notice that we already sent a resolution to the county?
I was out of town, so Tammy posted that based on what she was given. So I didn't include that in the email I sent out.
Okay.
But Cheryl did send the resolution again to the county and also to the county planning board. So they did get it again. Cheryl said in light of receiving the notification of a community hearing, we wanted to make sure you saw a resolution against us, and it was also sent to the planning board.
So that addresses the one on Billy Cowie, but now the one that Frank was talking about.
No, it's right here if you want to read it. It talks specifically about the Epcot one.
It was the one you did in March or February?
So yeah, we can definitely work on something for Park Place.
It might be a goal for the meeting tomorrow, and we need to talk about if we're going to form a council, but we'll be to focus on communicating specifically to the residents that this is not a development that's under the control of this council. This is specifically being controlled by the county, and I don't want to get any nasty phone calls or emails because it might be in the smack dab center of Wesley Chapel, but it is not under the control of Wesley Chapel.
But you will get your phone call.
I'm sure we will.
They even find me.
Well, it's one of those things that if we publicly say it, we can hold up a resolution saying, we sent this resolution specifically to the county opposing this, they can at least put away their pitchforks for the night.
And I've made that really clear when I posted it, when I sent it to the county, when I posted it to the Sunshine List, You know, I felt a little like, you know, this is right in Wesley Chapel, but it's county-controlled land. It's not, even though it's in the middle of our town.
And I've seen it on Facebook quite a bit over the last few days. So,
Well, if anybody sees it posted, or if you're going to post it again, please make sure that they know that it's not specifically under our control.
I can go in there and pull that out if you want me to.
you could post our resolution if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you email me?
Can I what?
Email her the resolution.
Oh, sure.
And I'll post that tonight.
Okay.
Our next meeting for the Communications Committee is July 16th. I'm assuming we'll be doing it in person here at Town Hall. And if there's no more questions, I'll bid to do.
Thank you, Deb.
Thank you, Deb.
The pictures are beautiful. I love them.
Thank you.
It was so good. Doesn't even look like me.
It looks just like
It's just
it's just really a good picture.
That'll turn us over to Cheryl with her finance officer's report.
Oh, okay. All right, you have the May reports. And first off, I'll mention that we received a wire transfer on Friday for the 2.6 acres that we sold. We received $439,600. I did contact the bank about what they might offer for CD rates, and you can go ahead and laugh. The rates are really poor. He said the Federal Reserve is meeting later this week, and you know, maybe it'll get worse, maybe it'll get better. It's like 0.2%. So, pardon?
0.2.
Yeah, 0.2%. Yeah. So,
before we get off that particular subject, can George step in here and tell us where we're at with the, even though we received the funds, where are we at with contact from the shopping center?
There was some communication. I got a call 2 weeks ago. Talked with the lawyer for the shopping center, and he asked about whether there was a possibility of settlement. And I said, if you guys want to bring a proposal, and bring it to me, and I'll take it to the council.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I really don't want us to tie up these funds into a long-term CD.
Well, I think we should tie them up until we know we're not going to get sued over them.
I think the early withdrawal fee would be minimal if we do invest in a CD, but I think we should tie them up if we do get sued. So it's just, the money is just sitting there, we'll spend it.
So can we sell us the suits again?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we still have one a year and
A year?
So we talk about statute of limitation on that?
Yeah, it's not really, well, yeah, it's technically not statute of limitations. It's just a rule of procedure that allows you to refile a lawsuit that's been dismissed within a year of the dismissal.
I'm leery about tying up that funds where we can't touch them in the CD or have a penalty for withdrawing them. You know, I think we can be enough of adults to keep it in an account without necessarily spending it or tag it specifically for a specific thing. But
like Lori said, you can break a CD.
well, yeah, for a penalty.
Yeah, but it's
usually a nominal.
instead of $200, you get $50. Whatever.
Substantial penalty for early withdrawal is the numbers, the words that I always remember hearing.
Well, you ask them to put that in dollars and cents when they're paying 2%, they're only going to charge you so much to break that.
And I also think that just because we get money doesn't mean we should spend it immediately.
I agree.
So I think that we would be wise to invest it and sit on it for a while.
So, George, I guess the question is for you, from a legal standpoint, what are the odds of us having to deal with this again in a month, 6 months, 8 months?
No idea.
No idea.
I mean, I really don't. I mean, all I can say is what I said, which is, you know, he was sniffing around about what was going on and whether or not you guys might be open to some discussions about it, which would indicate to me that they are at least considering suing again. But I really don't know.
Okay. On our revenues, we received the alcoholic beverage tax, which comes annually. It came in at 102% of budget, so that's good. I did notice our sales and use taxes, the last 2 months have been the lowest months of the year. It's down a good 10%. Also, zoning permits, the last 3 months are our lowest, and they're down about 17%. I think that's pretty much all I have.
All right, so that brings us, any questions for Cheryl? So that brings us to the public hearing on the question of annexation of General Statute 168-31. So I would like to call order the public hearing for the question of annexation pursuant to General Statute 168-31. Would anybody like to speak to that? So I will close, no further comments, so I will close the public hearing. And then I will call to order the public hearing on 2021 budget and fee schedule. Are there any comments on that? Yes, sir.
The one thing I'd like to point out on the budget is that I was part of the meeting, we had a very long discussion about it, and I'm not going to rehash everything we discussed, and I will not be specifically asking for a meeting for the park, but we all kind of ran our campaigns on land use when we were running and trying to win these seats. I think, not that I want to change, but I'd like to point out that that's kind of why we ended up here the way we did. And one of the things we cut was the budget specifically for redoing our land use plan and our, specifically our ordinances. If we just got an influx of $440,000, I would like to see us to at least consider spending some of that money, if not now or sometime in the future, specifically to address those issues, because our ordinance books obviously need overhauling, the work on the land use plan and everything else that we've charged George or Robin or Cheryl or Amy to work on. It just seems like an avalanche of work, and we have the option, or we still have the option of farming that out and letting a third-party company do it. But of course, it's going to be more expensive. It'll get done quicker, it'll get done more professionally. Not to say anything negative about George or Cheryl and Rob or everybody else, but it just seems like that was a weird place for us to cut. And I'd like us to consider, maybe not in this existing budget, but in the next annual budget, consider putting something like that back together. I see that as a priority.
Okay. Any other comments? All right, I will, no further comments, I will close that public hearing. And that takes us to the status of the settlement agreement for 410 Cottonwood Circle. Robin?
Yeah, Dave and George can speak to this too. I think we have two things we need to address with this. One is to go over the offer itself, which we do not have a signed offer. The hope was to get one by last Friday, I believe, is what you guys had originally planned. But and I had the email from Sarah, who works with George. She's been trying to call the property owner and his son, and the response she got was that they did not have the money to pay what was in the agreement, and then she's trying to get a hold of the father, who's the named property owner. I believe, is that right? It's in a testimony.
Yeah, he's the named trustee of the trust, which makes him the property owner, and then she's been communicating with him some and his son some, and it's not clear to me who lives there exactly, or maybe both of them do.
Me either.
Which may explain why the house was in the condition it was in.
Yes. So aside from that, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that offer itself. The second thing I'll get into in a minute, but I think we're just waiting.
Yeah, I think that there was some question about a payment plan, an installment plan for what we what had been agreed to accept from them for fees and the penalties or fines, not penalties. And I think there was they raised the question about not being able to pay all that up front. I think that was the only open item.
Which I think leads into the second piece, which is we've never gotten this far before with any of our code cases. And so initially, I had been, Michelle and I had talked a while when this first started. And I think in the past, you guys had someone that was fine and they came to council and it was addressed. Was it waived completely?
There was a case many years ago in the church. Guy who had a landscaping business, Tanyard Road, I think it was. And he had accrued a big fee, and they did make a settlement. It wasn't as much as this because it didn't go on this long. But yeah, council approved a settlement with him.
So
it didn't go to lawyer either.
Yeah, so that person had come to council, and you guys had worked it out, or they had worked it out during a meeting, which is, and I have the emails. When I had told Sarah that the property now is fine, and that the code has been, or the violation had been mediated, I had said, I guess we need to now have this person come to council based on understanding what had happened in the past with Cheryl. The response I got was that, I believe it was you and her, or maybe her, but that they would prefer to work out a settlement agreement before and not make someone come to council and ask. And so that's why I had forwarded you guys the email with my explanation of different things, just to keep this going. And that's where we are now. And so now that we've actually done that part, first time ever, do you guys feel comfortable with that? Should we update the procedure? We don't have a formal procedure for this because we haven't done it before. And so now what should we do? And George, I want you to speak to this too, because the guidance really came from you guys on how to.
And the reason for the guidance was because we had to file a lawsuit. Like I wouldn't recommend having the other side in an active lawsuit come to a public meeting to discuss a resolution to that meeting. I mean, they can do that. Obviously, you can't stop them from coming, but I wouldn't make that your policy. So that's why I suggested, since we have an active lawsuit, let us deal with resolving it through a settlement agreement that contains a release and all that kind of stuff. Prior to that time, if it's fines accruing or an initial letter and you want to have some dialogue with the property owner, I don't see any real issue with that. It's just once it gets into litigation, because anything that happens in the midst of that litigation might end up in court in some manner, and it's uncontrollable in that situation.
Wouldn't council have to approve a settlement in a closed session?
Yes. Well, you don't have to approve it in a closed session. It doesn't have to be a closed session.
It could be an open session.
Yeah.
Okay.
No requirement that it would have to be, but if to the extent that privilege wanted, so in terms of settlement negotiations back and forth, to the extent you want to maintain attorney-client privilege, that would be in closed session. But once we have a number, if it's just blessing a settlement agreement that's already been entered into, that could be done in open session. And actually, ultimately, would have to be done in open session.
And my question is, okay, so we say, you owe us $2,000 and you're going to pay $500 a month, and they pay 1 month and then they don't pay. What am I supposed to do then? What leverage do I have, or
Yeah, it depends. That's a breach of the agreement, so they'd have to be sued again to recover, unless you took some kind of collateral from somebody. I mean, this is the debate anytime anybody's trying to settle a lawsuit. Like, how do I? And it's paid over time. Like, how do I secure myself that I'm going to get paid? And sometimes there's some type of collateral available to secure that, and sometimes there's not. What we're doing is getting a confession of judgment against them if they fail to. I think we did this. If they fail to pay, then that judgment can be filed against them, so you don't actually have to go back to court.
But how do you get money out of attorney,
Well, but that's no different whether you agree to a settlement or not, right? If you can't get money from them, if it's a problem of getting money from them, then proceeding through the lawsuit and getting a judgment against them doesn't do you much good either, right?
Put a lien on their property.
Well, judgment's a lien against the property, right?
I see this as two separate issues. This specific property, we've got two things we're trying to do. One, recoup the cost that we've had to put out to get the property, through paying George, through paying Robin, sorry, I forgot her name for a second. So we just want to get the money back that the taxpayers have spent to get this issue resolved. The other issue is we need to make it clear to the homeowner that just because he is paying or has paid a fee or a fine, whether that's through a payment plan or anything else, that we don't want the property to go back to the way it was. We don't want a reoccurrence of the problem. So the question that we have to ask is, are we going to give the authority to negotiate the terms specifically to Robin or to George, or do we want to make those terms? And I think that's the second part of it is, if this happens again, more clearly define what the procedures are going to be.
My recommendation on that point would be that it's kind of cumbersome to have to come for most of these. Like most of these are, to the extent they happen again, most of these are pretty small matters, right?
Yeah, I don't foresee them going this far.
Yeah, and so it would be fairly cumbersome to have council have to approve each and every step along the way in those things. But what's difficult about that is giving Robin, I don't know, maybe you could give Robin some level of authority, but the problem with that is if you said something, well, Robin, you have authority to negotiate these to 75% of what's owed. Well, that's public record, so any person is going to know what they have to pay, right?
But let's be clear. What was the original fee of penalties and lawyer costs and everything else?
On this particular one?
Like
it was like 12 grand or 13 grand?
Just over 16. It was like 15.9.
And we're already down to
8.
That's not a very good negotiation, in my opinion. It's not a very good negotiation tactic to go to a resident or homeowner and say, look, you owe us $15,000, but right off the bat, we're going to reduce it to 8. I would rather say, look, we're going to reduce it to 8 if you agree not to have your property fall into disarray again, and if not, we're going to go back to the 15 that you owe us.
Well, as soon as it falls into disarray again, she can start finding it. So you're not resolving something from here to the future. This is just resolving what has happened up to this point. So if they put a car in their yard again, you can start finding them every day.
We can go right back to that civil citation. I don't have to read.
No, you'd have to go through the process again. My point is they don't get to do whatever they want.
I don't think we want to penalize the property owner, nor do we want to penalize the residents of Wesley Chapel. We want to just reincur our cost back to the residents, and at the same time, we don't want this property to fall in disarray again. Is that a fair statement?
Well, the fees are there to be a deterrent.
Absolutely.
And if you start off saying, well, we only want you to cover our costs, and you're saying that deterrent, we're like, sort of a deterrent.
We've already gone from the 15,000 to the 8,000 without even discussing it as a council. That decision was made.
I'm not.
Discuss it. Let's discuss.
Yeah, I don't want to set that precedent that says, hey, we'll always just sell them for cost. Also at the same time, I understand people may have to do something on a payment plan, and maybe there's a way to say, hey, there's a payment plan for the full amount, and then after some period of time, it can be forgiven. Maybe there's a different way to incentivize to ensure they pay. But
I think if it rises, my thought would be, again, if it rises to where you have to sue them and go through that process and where you're paying us real money to have to pursue it, then that's something council's got to make a decision about what gets paid, how it gets paid, all that kind of stuff. Before that, again, then you're maybe talking about some discretion that Robin has, not necessarily to negotiate what the fees are, because I think ultimately you guys may want to approve that, but how she pursues it. She goes through her steps, but what kind of communications does she have with people before that? She's probably going to need a little bit of leeway in that regard.
So, is there a proposal for a procedure?
At this point, we don't have one because we were coming tonight hoping that we had a signed agreement and we could talk about that. But in discussing that and things like that, I figured right now we have a procedure that I've gone to council with now twice, previous councils, to figure out, okay, how do we move forward, in which direction do we go, abatement or civil citations. We went civil citations, but more of how the process went this time. So we have an agreement that George is working on, but I guess it goes back to what Mike was saying. Who makes the terms of the agreement? Were you guys okay with the emails? Should we do it that way in the future? Should we just, I mean, I don't know what exactly you need either. When Sarah said, give me something to go with, that's when I sent you guys her email and just my own. But then also, in terms of figuring out this procedure, Cheryl's going to need time to look into what kind of payment plan. Is there an interest that is added? How are we going to, we've never done this before. So in terms of where we are now, is there something that you guys didn't like, that you did like? Give me something so I can write a procedure so in July we kind of have something written. That's what I'm asking for.
I think I can sum it up from my perspective as simply as possible. Take whatever we spent to get the problem fixed, whatever we spent of taxpayers' money, to get that money back, and do our best to prevent that from becoming an issue in the future. And if it continues to be an eyesore or becomes a problem again, we put a lien on the property. And this is, unfortunately, you inherited a problem that previous code enforcement people would just let slip through the cracks time and time again, year after year after year. I think now it's to the point where they realize you're really serious. So if they'll pay us a few $100s a month in a payment plan and we get the taxpayers' money back, I'm fine with that. Now and in the future.
So are we okay doing the negotiation? I send you guys what the bill is, what my thoughts are, you guys respond.
Shouldn't it be in an open meeting?
Yeah,
I'm very uncomfortable with that.
This is the problem with it, and what makes it cumbersome potentially to deal with it again. So, if the lawsuit's filed, we're engaged. I would want to have a closed session to go through the parameters of the settlement and what the parameters are that would authorize us to settle. So that's one area. Before that, I think as we're talking about like going forward, before that, I mean, I think it would have to be discussed either with Robin in an open meeting, or there'd have to be some discretion given to the mayor to deal with items up to a certain amount, maybe. Fine situations up to a certain amount where the mayor can direct Robin to deal. I'm just trying to think of ways that it makes it a little less cumbersome, and that's, I don't know, I'm just kind of making this up off the cuff, really. I don't know.
So
in a lot of I think in a lot of larger municipalities, stuff like this doesn't come to council, right? I mean, that's handled at the staff level, and that's because it would be impossible to approve each and every one of these things if you're in a larger metropolitan area. But so you guys are kind of in that place where it comes up enough to where it's maybe a problem and cumbersome to deal with, but not enough to really draw that much attention. So, like I said, one option before it gets to legal would be maybe that the mayor is given some authority up to a certain dollar amount to handle the matters with the planning director. Just a thought.
Well, there's penalties in place for so much per day and everything, right?
That's after, so I have to send them out. Just to go over real quick, I send a warning citation. It's not in our ordinance to do that, but I do because I'd rather them be aware before I send them a formal notice. And that's my first communication with most of these people. And I give them, depending on what the issue is. If it's something I know that's going to take a lot of work, I'll give them 3 to 4 weeks. If it's something that they can handle on a weekend, like mowing their lawn, I give them 2 weeks. Then I send out the first notice of violation. There's a period of time and a due date. A second notice of violation and a due date. Then we go to civil citation. The civil citation is written that you have, I think, 14 or 15 days, and then the penalty starts. And so it's whatever that time period is afterwards. So once I send it, then I go back out at the end of that. That's when that accountability starts.
I'm fine with the procedure up to that point. The question is, what are we going to do from that point forward?
So if it doesn't go to George, whenever it's remedied, then I will have the 2 dates and we can calculate the fee. And then it would be up to Cheryl and I guess, to handle. Unless they did not want to pay it, then they could come to you guys. When it does go to George, it's in George's hands. What happened in this case in particular was that it was settled, or the violations mediated. There's already a lawsuit, which is when we got contacted for, okay, we're going to work out a settlement agreement based on this open lawsuit that we have. Give me some parameters. That's when I emailed you guys, got all of the information together and talked to Amanda about it, and we made, Amanda and I talked about it, and then we sent that to Sarah. Is that okay, or do you want that to happen now at council level?
I mean,
because we asked you.
Yeah, there's no right way to do it. I mean, as I'm sitting here hearing y'all talk and thinking about it, I mean, it would probably make some sense to have. I mean, in the ideal world, you know, again, if there were more of these going on, you'd have a closed session to go over 10 of them at one time, but that's not going to happen. Hopefully. In my ideal world, once the lawsuit's filed, if there's a resolution to be discussed, we would have a closed session at the next council meeting, or if for some reason it was an emergency, which I can't imagine it ever would be, you could have a special meeting, but have a closed session at a council meeting to discuss it. Council in that closed session gives me direction on what the settlement parameters are. Those settlement parameters are protected by attorney-client privilege, so it doesn't get out to the public. Then once an agreement is negotiated and reached with the property owner, then you guys vote on and approve the settlement agreement, and that's done in open session.
But all this takes time, and none of this happens quickly, and we have council meetings every month. There's no reason why we couldn't be included in the conversation as the process goes through.
No, definitely not. But you know, again, if it's in a lawsuit, I wouldn't want you to have those discussions in open session about the specifics of the lawsuit.
I think what you're kind of going for is, like, we start this process, we're going to be aware of it on reports. We're going to be aware of the situation that's going on. We're going to be aware that this person has gone through these steps that she said before they ever get to the penalties. So the council will definitely have a view that this is coming. And I think what I'm hearing George say is, like, once you get to that point of assessing penalties and everything else, that's when we probably should be going into closed session to be discussing how we want to remediate it or deal with remediation.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I mean, we all get the report from Rob on a monthly basis about code violations.
So it's never a surprise.
Right. So as long as we read the reports and know what level of escalation it's gone to, there should be no surprises here.
So, Robin, what do you need from us tonight?
I think I have enough. What I would like to do is write it up as a procedure and have George go over it and make sure it's written and that way we're clear on it. And then the next step too is also you know, I wrote Cheryl an email about this as well, that once it gets to paying that back, that's kind of the finance officer takes the lead on that. And I don't want to throw something in her lap that she's not prepared to handle because we haven't handled it before. And so maybe part of this procedure then is figuring out what kind of payment plan. George, I don't know if you guys have dealt with this before either, especially with a small jurisdiction like us. How do we make sure we're protected?
I mean, most often you can't be protected. Just if you're going to agree to a payment plan, you just got to understand that they might not pay. I mean, that's just the truth of the matter. I mean, it's not like you're going to be dealing with a lot of people that are going to be like give you a lien on their car or something.
Well, Robin, let me understand what your question is. So you're dealing directly with the resident. You're the one sending the letters. Okay. And once you get to the point where there's penalties or we come to an arrangement for payment, I don't want to shift from you to the finance officer. They should still be dealing with one person. This is just my opinion. And then when you receive a check on payment plan, you give it to Cheryl. Is that how would that be a problem?
Could we see how other people handle payment plans? Like how does the city of Monroe handle a payment plan or something?
And we can look at how they do the payment plan.
Probably have somebody larger than us that would actually have payment plans.
And I've reached out to other code enforcement officers, and Cheryl, I have talked to Indian Trail, and they have a different process, and I know Cheryl would talk to someone at Indian Trail as well. Most other jurisdictions they do their own taxes and different things like that, and so they have other avenues to collect money. It's not just, am I saying this correctly, Cheryl?
Yeah, somewhat. The other thing is, and I've been thinking about it for the last 20 minutes, is that we did an amendment with our contract with Union County, the tax office, to collect things. And I'm just wondering, if we just leave it as a lien, the county can collect it. I mean, they'll foreclose if they have to collect it. I need to check that to, see the fine print and all, but
Yeah, I don't know.
that may
I don't
be
know.
definitely an
I
option.
mean, it could be an option. I don't know. Again, like I said, I don't know what the
I
agreement
like that.
could be an option.
It's a consistent way of how we're getting the revenue, and if you can leverage it with the county for a reasonable cost or whatever, and avoid some of that administrative headache.
And once it comes to a financial thing, it shouldn't be in Robin's hands anymore. That's a financial agreement that they make payments on a
Yeah,
plan.
I agree, it's a financial arrangement with the village, and it's ceased being a code enforcement issue, it's now
Right.
a financial issue.
Yeah, but if you're having an issue and you're only dealing with one person all the time, then all of a sudden we can transfer to somebody else.
That's life. That's life.
Okay, well, I was just trying to avoid that if that was the.
We're not trying to be customer
So
friendly.
Cheryl, you will check with the tax office?
Let me check with that,
Let
yeah.
Robin know, or let
And I
us
may
all
send
know.
it to George.
We resolve the issue with the
I think that
title
would
and
be
circuit.
probably a procedure to do it.
And then we wouldn't have to negotiate anything? It would just be the full amount, or would it be negotiated?
I would assume some agreement like that would allow them some leeway to negotiate, right? I mean,
I don't think so.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
But that's always, that's the problem, right? That's always going to happen. You get $5,000, $6,000, $10,000 worth of fines on somebody that's got trash in their yard. There's always going to be a situation about trying to negotiate that down.
So Robin's going to draft a procedure
Yes.
and check it with George. Sheriff's going to check with the county.
Mm-hmm.
What else do you need?
So I think, if I understand, I'm going to draft procedures for a certain part of it, and we'll put whatever Cheryl finds from the county in one procedure so that we know, and that way it covers the whole thing. There will be a portion that I will then let go of it, and then it will transfer to Cheryl's purview. And we'll have George review that. Does that sound
Okay.
clear?
I'm good with that. The question is on the conflict circle issue. Have we resolved that? Are we?
No.
Okay. Who's negotiating this payment plan?
Nobody yet.
No, we
They just came back, the son came back and said, I don't know if we can pay what we're supposed to pay. And he said, talk to my dad. And the associate of my office is dealing with it. Tried to get the dad like 50 times, can't get the dad. So it's really nothing at this point other than the son saying, I don't think we can pay that.
Are we dealing with like, okay, $200 a month until the 8,000 is paid off? Or
No.
That's what I'm saying. I have no idea. They just said, no, we can't pay it.
In the letter that was sent out, I don't even know if it really spelled out that a payment plan was an option. It was more like, this is how much you owe. Do you agree? Do you not? Do you have a counter offer? That type of thing. We didn't set parameters up for a payment plan. It was just more of a, if you can't afford this, it's an option that they have in their wheelhouse to discuss.
So I guess the question the council needs to ask or answer to give them direction is who's going to be given the authority to negotiate this payment plan or this settlement? Is it going to sit with George
No,
and
they're
his
going to
associates? Is it going to sit with Robin?
Bring it back and it'll be a closed session.
Yeah, the way I have it written down is there will be a closed session to go over the parameters before George's group sends the settlement letter out, and then once an agreement is reached, you guys have to approve the actual agreement in an open session.
I'd be happy with just sending them a letter saying this is what you owe us, what can you pay per month?
But George says it has to be a closed session.
Well, I mean, it doesn't have to be.
It should be.
It doesn't, but it seems to me it ought to be if the lawsuit's active.
But Robin's going to draft a procedure so that gives
Yes.
us, we'll have time to review it before the next council meeting.
So essentially the difference is, instead of me emailing you guys, we'll have a closed session.
All right, so we're good on that item. So now we're going to consider consider approval of ordinance 2020-03 to extend the corporate limits of the village of Wesley Chapel for the annexed parcels.
Cheryl, how many parcels are we talking about?
Not too many. Hold on just 1 second.
30 or 300?
No, Adelaide Estates.
There's
lot
one-
39, open spaces, estates at Wesley, is
8.
45, lot 9, and the 8-acre parcel on Shamwood Road.
So you said 8 parcels, Cheryl?
Mm-hmm. And 4 of them are common open space, which means you don't get any tax money on them.
So do we have a motion?
I'll motion that we approve the ordinance 2020-03 to extend the corporate limits of the village of Wesley Chapel for annexation parcels mentioned.
Second, any discussion? All in favor? That moves us to considering approval of ordinance 2020-04 to establish the budget for the 2021 and financial year and to approve the fee schedule effective July 1st, 2020.
Do we need to separate these, or can we do them both at the same time? I think the fee schedule is a big difference in the budget.
I would do them separately, but I don't recall
I don't care.
what you guys have done in the past. I would do them separately.
All right, so we have a motion.
A motion to approve the fee schedule effective July 1st, 2020, as amended.
Have a second? All in favor? And for the budget?
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposed 2020-2021 budget.
Have a second?
In discussion, are we in agreement that the money we're going to be receiving for the sale of the property behind 201 Central is not something we're going to go out and spend in the next 12 months?
No, we're not going to see another.
Did that motion include the ordinance, or is that going to be a separate motion?
So it's a separate one made by Lori with a second by David.
But that was a motion for the ordinance, or
Yes.
For the
I'm
budget?
sorry, I did not say that rightly yet.
the ordinance? Okay.
So any more discussion? All in favor? All right, that takes us on to the planning board, where we have to accept the resignation of Stanley Ellis, and we are going to appoint Sherry Killian and Carl, can I say that, to new 3-year terms, which will end June 30, 2023 as alternates. We're going to move Deb to alternate to regular, and then we have to find a new alternate. The 2 people we had put on a waiting list because they showed interest did not want to accept appointment. So Cheryl, can we do all that in one motion? Or do we have to do it individually?
It's fine with me.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
So anybody want to make a motion that we do all those, accept the resignation, appoint Sherry Carl as alternates to new terms, Deb from alternate to regular, and have Cheryl advertise for a new planning board?
So motion.
Have a second? All in favor?
Before we take the formal vote, John, do you have any input? Okay, just a report. As the chairman of the planning board, I wanted to see if you had anything to say.
One other question, I know Dr. Hales was very instrumental with the tree ordinance language. Do you know at this point who will take her spot on that subcommittee? No.
Deb did say, not Deb. Sandy said she would be glad to continue to provide input on the tree and the comprehensive plan, I think stormwater.
I would say note that she's also our vice chair. I appoint somebody as new vice chair.
And that's 2 weeks from now?
Yes.
Well, and she still gets to attend the June meeting. This will be in July.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you'll have to make the motion, we have to plant the seed that you're going to be looking for a new vice chair.
So I'm sorry, the resignation of Dr. Ellis, is that effective as a resignation, or is that just not being reappointed?
It's not reappointed, really.
Okay.
It's both, kind of.
So I'm confused. Are we accepting the resignation as of today, or as of
No,
July 1st?
July 1st, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We voted on that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Did we vote?
We voted in.
Oh, yeah, all in favor.
Be clear. All right, so that brings us to item 15, discussing our plan to reopen town hall and meetings.
I think Mike added the survey conversation.
Oh, yeah, we did. I'm sorry. Back up. You wanted a survey update, Mike? Go for it.
Yeah, I briefly discussed it with Robin today, but we just kind of glossed over it. I'd like Robin to do a full update on where we are.
So the survey is ready to go. It's published and it's open. I haven't put anything out yet, just because I didn't want to open the survey into a public post, not knowing exactly when the postcards are going to go out. Postcard is done into the printer. The printer currently has the address list and is scrubbing it. So because there was an issue over potential number of how many we were sending it to, what she discussed with me was that send her the list. She's going to go through it with the people, see how many postcards it's actually going to require, and then that way we have a number. And then give me an ETA on when the printing will actually be done. And then once I have that, then I'll get Deb and Cheryl to put it out on the sunshine list, Facebook, and things like that.
Are we expecting it to go out before July?
That's the hope.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. I would like it to be out by the end of the week, but it really depends on the printer. And like I said, they're scrubbing that list, which
Taking out duplications, things like that.
exactly.
And where do you stand on focus group applications? How many more do you need?
I sent an email actually right before this meeting to Cheryl and Deb. We need about 4 more, so 1 more call should do it. And I specifically asked for certain people to volunteer for 2 or 3 more groups that just have a lower amount of people that want to be part of that. Everyone wants to be part of the land use focus group. Transportation and economic development were the other big ones. And so we need a couple more on water, stormwater. So my hope is by July I will give you guys a list of who I think should go in each focus group, so you guys can prove that, and then you can go have focus groups. And then after the survey is done and the focus groups are done, everything on the comp plan halts. So we won't be having our joint meeting in June. That's not going to happen until much later, till the ordinance stuff is done enough that we can go back to the comp plan.
And Robin did attend a 160D update class the other day. Or it hasn't happened yet.
No, I haven't done that yet. That's in a couple of weeks. That's a workshop School of Government is having where they're actually going to help figure out how to rewrite some of this stuff. Because a lot of it is really complex. I was doing a planning in the pandemic workshop that was 4 different Fridays, and one of those went over 160D, really just discussing how the pandemic has changed certain things and updates from the legislature. But a lot of that focused on, I'm just going to be honest, focused on all this technology that everyone is using, and we don't have access to any of that. So I have some notes to look into for the future of ways that we can invest in streamline permitting and planning and things like that to help go more virtual, which will help us in the future.
The last thing under number 14, related to planning and zoning, is Cheryl, have you got any kind of notice that there will be a quorum of council at tomorrow night's meeting, that public meeting for Christmas?
Nobody told me that they were attending it.
Is anybody else planning on attending?
I don't know.
Well, then never mind. Then that.
Okay.
Done.
All right, John, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I got 2 things. One, if we're not going to appoint somebody to that vacant spot, we publish that we're accepting applications for a vacancy.
Yeah, Cheryl will do that.
That was in the motion.
And then Cheryl also, I think, give it to Deb and then go on the sunshine myself.
And then 2, will you be attending our planning board meeting?
Yes.
That's good. So, of course, we've been out of the loop the planning board has for a few months now. So, a lot of us will be coming back, not really understanding lay of land, the coronavirus, what are the new expectations for the budget, or I mean, a lot of things. So, if you can come help familiarize us with how we see things going from this point forward, that'd be good. And so, I think maybe trying to put that at the very beginning of the agenda. Makes sense.
That leads us right into our plans for the next stage of reopening town hall and meetings. Amy will will be on vacation next week, and so Cheryl will be working 2 days in the office, and Robin will be working 2 full days in the office. And I don't know what council's thoughts are. I don't know if it is, if we want to take another step when we find out what phase 3 is. I'm not real sure.
So you went to the meeting today for the county, and it sounds like the cases are going up. So any inclination that we're on track or not on track for phase 3?
So basically, the health director said that one of the reasons that they're seeing a large increase is there's more testing. There's a lot of mobile sites, and then that a large number of the cases now are for people who came in contact with a positive case. So through like contact tracing and stuff, you find out that you were around an infected or a positive COVID case, so you immediately then go and get tested. So that was another reason that the numbers were increased. We'll also see what effects protesting in large crowds will have probably in 2 weeks.
And phase 3 is like 4 to 6 weeks into June, right?
June 25th or 26th?
Yes, okay. So, just my opinion, but I don't think we should make any changes until phase 3 to consider like more publicly open it. I think we should be conservative. We're open to business. We're just asking anybody that comes in the building to wear a mask. We're asking to kind of limit, like we said in the last meeting, for none of us to really be going around. I don't know, I haven't been here, so I don't know if y'all have been here, and your thing, but, I trust if you come into the building, you wear your mask. If not, then we should ask you to leave. But it's for the protection of people. So I don't see any reason to change anything before phase 3, and then I think phase 3 got it, so that's like back to normal, whatever, we adjust.
I agree. We're still planning on having Parks and Rec and planning board meetings here. One question I was asking in a text I just received, we typically have our Humane Society board meetings here. We've been doing them on Zoom. We have one scheduled for tomorrow, also on Zoom. And they want to know when they can start having meetings here again. And I said, I would discuss that at tonight's meeting. So I understand the phase 2 versus phase 3 requirements. I would recommend we hold off using the town hall for anything not
because I think
necessary.
Look at it like a business.
Sure.
And because that means we have to sanitize after we leave here.
Absolutely.
We got to clean the place. And why have to do more?
Get out and wipe down all the tables and stuff. And
we got to protect our employees.
It's not really. Yeah.
So nothing really is going to change until phase 3. Is that what we're saying?
But we have talked about, I know because at Deb's request and at Robin and John, the potential for planning board and other committees, Parks and Rec too, to have the option to virtually meet. So it might be something that you need to draft for your, what is it, your charter,
I sent an email to the planning board asking if they had a preference. Anyone, and all of the responses I got about responses from half the people, and they all said that they have no problem coming here as long as masks are required. But I will say, in response to that, when council meets, there's 4 of you. When planning board meets, there's currently 7, but there could be 8. And so spacing is going to look a lot different for a planning board meeting. And so just, I guess, Mike, you set this up. If you can help set up the planning board and make sure we have enough space.
And I do think we just need to solidify the number of people that can be in the room.
Most places would go to emergency from the fire marshal, an emergency maximum head count like ours is 150 in here. But I think with the new thing, 25 would be the most we put in this room.
Yeah, and I'm thinking that might be smaller now. I'd just like to verify that so that because the planning board meeting and all is just much larger.
I can verify that. Yeah, it's hard to get the 6-foot spacing.
It is, and that's where I'm worried because, like, that's why you're regular business. You got a lot more people at the planning board to have that space so that we're compliant.
But also the general will be tickled to death if there were 25 people here. So.
25 people for Parks and Rec meeting?
It's going to be exactly 8 people.
Well, the planning board still.
And Cheryl did, I sent a list from things that other towns are doing to protect people. So like you might not even notice, but like the sanitizer and the used pens and the not used pens, and so there are like wiping down the podium between speakers is a possibility. So we're doing the best we can.
And we have the podium without a microphone.
So no spitting.
So no spitting on the microphone.
So we'll reevaluate at phase 3, and I don't know if your committees want to talk about the potential of if we are in a state of emergency and council meet virtually, what that means for your own. But tune in to next month when that's out again.
What is the best guess on the date for phase 3?
Wasn't it June 26th, June the last?
I don't think it was like at least 4 weeks.
It's 26th, I think,
Okay.
is the earliest it could happen.
All right.
And then we have July 4th, so you know that and be like, so, yes ma'am.
Quasi-judicial, we do have a variance application that we pushed off. Quasi-judicial is incredibly difficult in terms of virtual, and all guidance is avoided if you can. I do know some jurisdictions that have done quasi-judicial, but they have a lot more technology available to them. Our applicant is waiting, and I get weekly emails. So initially the response was, we will talk about this, and we were having meetings, and the hope was to have it in June. Are we now pushing that back to July with phase 3?
Well, that's a committee meeting, just like any other. Parks and Rec's going to meet here, planning board, and communications is here. How many people are on the board of adjustment?
5.
5. And then you have to have you,
Me,
Cheryl,
Attorney.
George. So probably looking at 10. So let's confirm the number of people we're allowed to have, and then
we'll schedule that in
yeah.
June potentially or July.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing you had asked me to remind you, one thing that would have made my life so much easier through this whole thing was if we had a Dropbox of some sort, so that people could drop off permits as opposed to mailing them in the mail. That was the biggest complaint that I received, because even if they lived in Wesley Chapel, they'd have to put it through the mail, and who knows how long it would take to get to us. Or a lot of our developers, maybe the corporate office is in Charlotte, it would take 3 days. One particular developer, for whatever reason, it always takes at least a week. Whereas our project managers are in Wesley Chapel working on the projects. And so that was just something to bring up, that it would be nice if we could find a way to do that and have a Dropbox, even in the future.
Do you mean a physical Dropbox or the electronic Dropbox?
A physical Dropbox.
So could we, I mean, you're talking essentially just something that gets bolted down outside and they just drop it
Yes,
in
that
the other
box.
to get it out, or?
Yeah, because what I've told people is, like, we could put a box out there, but I don't want anyone putting a check in there if it's not bolted, or even if it's just like a letter opener in the door or in a window, something. I don't know the ins and outs, but just something to explore, because it would be a little bit less expensive. Well, less expensive than getting the technology. I don't know where you guys want to go. Otherwise, the option is to somehow find a way to accept credit cards and allow electronic submissions, which I have a lot of stuff for people that have done that in the past month, relatively inexpensively, but those are our kind of...
I'm okay if we research what our Dropbox options are, because I could see an advantage. You know, they want to drop out plans on their way home at night, they're there for you the next day. You know, it also does help cut down on people coming into town hall that don't truly need to be in here. Just do it routinely and help us be more efficient and productive.
How big physically would it have to be? Some of those plans are pretty...
Well, more tall than not, right?
Well, you know, the initial thought was just stuff for regular permits, would just be a letter, but if we wanted to include something where people dropped off plans...
I mean, a letter, they just need to put it in the mail.
Well, that's what I'm saying, to reduce having to put it in the mail. If someone's here, that they could just slide it in a Dropbox and we could pick it up the next day, instead of them putting something in the mail and it taking 3 or 4 days to get to us.
So you want them to look into options?
Yeah, just what the options are. I mean, like, is it cheaper just to cut a hole in the wall and let them throw it in, like old mailboxes, or, you know, a box that gets bolted down to the patio?
I'd be glad to look at when we got our mailbox and see what other options they
Yeah.
have. I can check on
Well,
that.
that's exactly what I was thinking about, something like that.
I would hold off on doing any kind of slip into the building or any kind of glass. I had a situation, and this goes back years ago, where people used to drop stuff off, and there'd be a little form fell out, and some guy came by and rolled up all the paper, lit it on fire, and slipped it through the slot. So I really had to take the metal trash can and put it there every night, so there's somebody did that.
Well, and I think that's a valid thing because I'm always telling everybody to keep the doors shut. It has to all do with the fire rating for our building and our insurance, and that's very important. Yeah.
I mean, security cameras obviously would help to some degree, but
They'd be burned down too.
And I don't care how it is. It's just the thoughts
it's
in my head.
convenience for the developer or for the resident.
Developer, resident, what have you. So many people, they all understood, and they were all very patient and very, very lovely to deal with, for the most part. But that was the biggest holdup was the mail, and it took just a while with that. Yeah, I will say, anecdotally, I used to work in a town hall that used to be a bank, so we had the drive-through, and it was great. But, you know.
All right, so now everybody's in consensus. We're going to see what phase 3 holds for us.
Sure.
So that brings us to item microphone.
Microphones?
Yeah, you made a motion last month to move the microphones for town hall.
No, we've already dealt with that. So we're looking
No, I think they're talking about these microphones.
The town hall microphone. Last month you wanted to push it back.
I'm going to push it back again.
Okay, that works for me. All right, so that means
So are we done with that item, or do I keep putting it on, or what? I need guidance.
my machine.
I don't like the bids we got. Obviously they're broken and we have a problem, we need to fix it, but I don't see, given the state of things right now, spending that kind of money. I mean, the bids range from over 3,000 to almost 10,000, and we'd have to make a budget amendment to fund them. Cheryl, how big of a problem is it? Right now we're not even using microphones. We may not for the next few months, so that it just seems silly to spend money on a microphone we're not going to use for a while.
Fine with me.
So we're just going to table it till it's a problem?
Well,
Let you put it back on the agenda when you're ready.
kick the can, yes.
So that brings us to AC at Town Hall, right?
Yeah, we had a small problem with the air conditioning unit. This goes back 2-3 weeks, and the email went out. Should we spend the $700 and change to fix the AC unit? Well, given the situation, I think we needed to employees in here that would have died in the heat without it. But at the same time, I ran into the AC guy who was here doing repairs. I said, "How much does that entire outdoor AC unit cost?" He goes, "Maybe $2,000-3,000, depending on how big you want to get." And I said, "Well, how much is the repair just for a day?" He said, $787. And I said, "Does that really make sense, at least for a unit that we bought back in, or that was new, when the building was built back in 2013, 2014, to spend that kind of money on a $2,000 AC unit?" He goes, "Yeah, well, the fee was a little higher than what it probably should have been, but I don't set the prices," is what he said. All I'm going to ask on the AC repair is that we look into having a different company do the repairs, or a different person contract for the repairs in the future. Because I think what the current contractor sees is they've got us for whatever number they write on a piece of paper we have to pay. And I'm not saying we do a lot of work. I think this is something that Amy can make a few phone calls on our behalf, and that's all I'm requesting. Then we can bring it back and we discuss it again.
So I also heard kind of the age of the general unit, and while this guy says 2,000, my experience with HVAC is more expensive than that.
That would be not to replace the inside part of the unit outside, which is no
But
problem.
it's also like, doing it right, everything else is, and it's 7 years old. I don't even know what the lifespan on that is. So to your point, I do think there's a balance of how much when we say should we repair or replace. I do think that's probably in the future.
I don't think we've ever farmed out or bid out what the repair. We pay a maintenance guy to take care of the AC unit. I think quarterly or monthly or?
Let me give you a little bit of history on it.
Yeah.
When they had Town Hall built, the contractor was Perigo out of Mount Holly, and they were far away. When things were wrong, it was hard to get them here. They were more expensive. So we went out and looked for somebody else, and it's hard to find somebody that will do 4 units that are commercial. This isn't doing your home units. And our administrative assistant at the time, Linnell, had talked to different people, found it hard to find a vendor, and Helms was the one who came in with a service contract for us. And so we've been using Helms now for a few years. We have a maintenance contract, which means they come twice a year. And if we have filters available, they will put the filters in for us. That's not something they normally do. And when there's a repair, then they give us a price on repairing it. They do give us a discount. I think it's a 15% on equipment. But there was a cost per service call. They don't come out and tell you what's wrong with it for free. So that's the history.
I'm not saying we have to change. I'm just saying we would like to see what else is out there. And it's literally just...
For a service contract or for... it's hard. You can't just say repairs because...
Yeah, I think it's a service contract, and that, listening to what you said, it's like if we can get somebody that's going to come service the units twice a year, then we give a discount on any parts or any repairs. And I'd like to have, if we have to pursue any repairs, the service fee gets waived. Like if they come out and they don't find anything, they'll pay. But I'm just asking.
If we're paying for a service, I can't see...
Well, our service contract was like, I'm not sure exactly what month, but we're not up for a new service contract right now. So,
But now's the time to be at least making some phone calls to see who else is out there that can do it. And I asked Amy, I said, do you have any problem making a few phone calls on our behalf? She said, no problem. She'll bring us the information and we can look at it over.
Well, that's fine. I'll ask her to do that.
Yeah, I never have a problem getting more information, but I'm just more interested in what the expected life is for one of those units.
And I can...
replacement costs, we can start thinking about that long term.
I do know that there was a hole in the copper tubing. They had to...
Recharge the unit.
All the Freon was gone, so they had to replace all that. And I don't know, what do you call it when you have to do something with metal and... I guess some sort of welding or whatever, some other name, yeah.
They repaired the hole.
Yeah.
So Amy's going
I mean, I can show you the invoice, yeah.
So that will bring us to our council comments for the evening. Who wants to start? Don't keep on doing. Mike, go for it.
Couple of things. I really appreciate Frank Capella and his recommendation to partner with Weddington and Mineral Springs to maybe speak with one voice with Weddington and with Mineral Springs on this high density or super high density occasions issue. And I'd like to pursue that as much as possible. Also, the other thing again that Frank brought up was this 30% increase in our water bill that's going to be taking effect over the next few months. I don't know about you, but I had the issue where my family was affected by the Catawba bloom of algae, where all of our water started tasting like dirt. It really kind of bugs me that they go, oh, your water's going to have a smell and a taste and an odor, and by the way, we're charging you 30% more for it. Did not sit well with me. I would like to see the county step up and say, look, we've had this problem, we know what the problem is, we'd like to fix it, and we'd like to give you a decrease in your water bill, and instead, I think it's a slap in the face that they're giving us 30% increase. That's just me on my soapbox. And everything else I've had answered tonight.
I would just like to thank the staff in particular for their flexibility and everything, and working through the situation with town hall. I thank council for limiting and respecting the staff's health and everything so that we can protect them and keep them working, keep them productive. And I think we struck a good balance of town hall never closed. We were always open for business. We just didn't physically let you talk to us necessarily. But we continue to do the business of the village, and thank you for that. And just appreciate everybody's flexibility and focus on safety first for that. So, that's all.
Do you want to carry on?
No, you close. You guys know that I'm a fan of quotations. Margaret Mead said, "Never doubt a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." Echo on what you said, Mike. I think the only way that we can gain any, I want to use the word control because I don't think we'll ever control parts of the county, but the only way that we can maybe more effectively share our concerns about high density housing, like Frank shared with us, was to have a more centralized, a more systematic, a more put in place group of people that can do that. We all have seen the actions within our country that have taken place over the last couple of weeks, and I hope that there's change that comes about from that. That's a huge group of people. But I think we can do the same thing, starting with a small group. Again, Margaret Mead said it best. That's the only way that it does happen, is to start. So thank you, Frank, for sharing the information.
Frank, I will reach out to the other towns' mayors and keep you posted and keep council posted. I want to say thank you to our committees, Parks and Rec and Communications, who didn't cry too much when we really cut budgets this past month. So thank you for working within our restrictions and what we do have. The one thing that we forgot to address, and I forgot to bring it up during the discussion about our budget, was we never formally addressed. We had talked about we need a formal donation request policy. We have an unofficial policy where we don't donate money. But we did have several organizations come to us in the month of April, May, June, January, February, asking for money. The WCWA and then Optimus Park and then the other
Crime Stoppers.
Yes. So I guess we need to let them know that we did not have any money in our budget for outside donations. Cheryl, if you can do that for us. Mm-hmm. And we need to add to our agenda at some point official policy for donation requests. I think that was your update. Thank you. And that's all I have. Everybody stay safe. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn. Second, all in favor?